Chapter 10 Farewells and Snowballs. 6 days after the Abbotts left Independence Rock, their wagon train got smaller. Some folks left the main trail to take a cutoff across the desert. That route could save 3 or 4 days, but it meant traveling 50 miles without water. The Beard brothers went that way. They figured anything that got them to California sooner brought them one day closer to their riches. The Abbotts set off on the longer, safer route that led to Fort Bridger. There, Sarah would meet up with her uncle so he could take her home to the Mormon community on the Great Salt Lake. They say when you see it from a distance with the sun shining, it looks like a lake of gold, Sarah said as they walked behind the wagon. The hope was back in her voice ever since she found her uncle's name on Independence Rock and wrote hers below it. Like maybe she could see a life for herself beside the sparkling lake, even though her parents were gone. When the Abbotts arrived at the fort, Ma started asking around for Sarah's uncle right away. It wasn't long before a man hurried up to the wagon. His clothing and hair were the color of the dry grass, but his eyes were bright green. He bent down and held out his arms. "Is this our Sarah?" Ma had wondered if Sarah would remember her uncle. She hadn't seen him in 4 years, but she did. "Uncle Aaron!" He wrapped Sarah in a hug that would have made any mama bear proud. When he finally let her go, both of their faces were streaked with tears. "We're going to take such good care of you. Aunt Helen's got your bed all made up. Martha, Eliza, Abram, and Mercy can't wait to see you again." Sarah smiled a little. At the campfire that night, she already seemed to be slipping away from the Abbotts and into the Clark family. She sat beside Uncle Aaron and listened to his stories about the big, salty lake. In the morning, Sarah hugged all the Abbotts and thanked them for their kindness. Sam pulled the 3 quilt squares from his pocket and unfolded them. He chose the one with the apple tree and held it out to Sarah. "It's part of our friendship quilt my cousin made. You can keep it to remember me." "I'll always remember you, but thank you," Sarah said. She tucked the square into her pocket and squatted down to pat Ranger. "I'm going to miss you, dog." Ranger nuzzled her hand. He'd missed Sarah too and hoped she would be all right. Seeing her small hand tucked into her uncle's big one made Ranger feel better. Safe, he thought. Sarah looked safe. When Sam and his family started off on the trail that went northwest, Ranger felt an unmistakable tug to follow. Sam still needed him. The Abbotts still had a long, dangerous road ahead. The nights had been getting colder as they went west into the mountains. One night it began to snow, not long after they made camp. The Abbotts had to eat their stew huddled against the wagon while the wind blew snow into their faces. They all piled in the wagon to sleep that night. In the morning, Sam woke up first. He waited outside in the snow, sparkling sunshine, hidden behind some bushes and packing the snow into balls. When Lizzie climbed down with her morning frown and her hair all tangled, he launched his attack. The first snowball missed. The second hit her in the shoulder and exploded into slushy bits. "Samuel George Abbott!" Lizzie hollered. Sam thought she'd run to Ma and get him in trouble. Instead, she bent down, gathered up a big handful of snow, and charged towards Sam's hiding spot. He didn't have time to run. Lizzie had good aim. She pelted him in the chest, and they both laughed. Sam tossed a snowball in the air for Ranger, who jumped to catch it in his teeth. The snowball broke up, and clumps got stuck in the fur on Ranger's chin. Sam laughed. "You look like you have a beard, dog." Lizzie went back to the wagon to get Amelia, and they all snowballed one another while Ma and Pa laughed. By late morning, the sun had melted the snow into slush, and it was time to set out again. In the days that followed, Sam saw more of the things he'd wondered about from his father's guidebook. It's a picture of them having the snowball fight. That'd be kind of fun, but there's no warm house to go into afterwards and no fireplace and no hot cocoa. So, whew. Sam drank the cold, clear water that bubbled up from the ground at Soda Springs and marveled at the spot called Steamboat Spring a little farther along the trail. It was just as Mr. Palmer had described it, a cone about 2.5 feet tall with 6-inch hole on the top. Every 10 seconds or so, water would come hissing and belching out the top. Sometimes it shot up higher than Sam was tall. One evening, when they made camp, the ground was covered in volcanic rocks, fragments as black as night and smooth as glass. Another night, the mosquitoes were so thick they swirled like flakes in a snowstorm. When Ma started making bread so many got into her bowl, there was no way to pick them all out. She finally gave up and kneaded them into the dough. Yuck. The bread that night was more black than white. Mosquito bread, but at least they all cooked out when she baked it. As they continued west, Sam started to hear his parents arguing in the wagon at night, though he didn't know why. Ranger heard it too. Ranger could sense fear in people's voices. He could smell it in the air, and with every passing mile, that scent grew stronger around Mrs. Abbott. Their next stop was called 3 Island Crossing. Something about it scared Ma a lot. And the next chapter is called Dangerous Crossing. That'll be chapter 11. Let's see, we have How many chapters are in here? Let's see. We have till chapter 14. So we have 11, 12, 13, 14. So 4 chapters to go. All right, come back for the next one.